for talking to us, Angela Rayner. Let's turn to some of those same questions with the Community Secretary, Sajid Javid. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning.
Good morning. 50 people killed in London so far this year in stabbings. And it's not just London, is it? I mean, across the country, knife crime up, I think, 21%, all sorts of violence up across the country. Are we facing some kind of public safety crisis in Britain?
Well, I mean, first of all, so many personal tragedies there, lives lost, people that won't reach their potential. And it's absolutely right that we focus on this both nationally and at the local level. It's worth recalling that crime overall has fallen significantly over the last decade.
I want to stick to the stabbings and the shootings.
But I agree with your main point that we have seen a rise in the last few years of serious violent crime. Now, well, there's no, I think, people often push for one single cause. There isn't one single cause. It is a complex issue, so it will require action on many fronts. That means dealing with the root causes, of course. It means having better early intervention. Now, that's something the Home Secretary will talk to tomorrow when she unveils the government's new serious violence strategy.
But something very grave is happening in this country. Let's just look at the figures that we've got. So this is across England and Wales. Murder up 17% compared with last year. Crime up 21%, knife crime up 21%, and gun crime up 20%. This looks like, to many people, a genuine crisis.
Of course, some of that will be down to better reporting, but of course there is a real increase. That does not explain the whole issue of the recording. There is a real problem here, and especially over the last 3 or 4 years. We have seen a significant decline before then, and now we're seeing a rise. So question is, for government, what are we doing about it? So the Home Secretary will announce this.
Enough police is what you're doing about it.
First of all, let me go through, if I may, just because there's many complex issues here. First of all, the Home Secretary tomorrow will announce a new serious violence strategy that will focus on the root causes and also on early intervention. But also there's a role to play for law enforcement, and that's what we're announcing today. And this is just the kind of thing that will make a big difference with the new serious weapons bill.
Just explain exactly what this new law is going to mean.
So it's a serious weapons bill. We want to bring it forward very quickly within a few weeks, and if we get cross-party support, I think it will become law very quickly. It will make it illegal for anyone to possess acid in a public place without good cause. It will make it illegal for under 18-year-olds to buy acid. It will also deal with some of the issues around knife crime, so it would make it illegal for anyone to order online a knife and have it delivered to a residential address. And it will also it would also make illegal the possession in private of certain weapons, such as the so-called knuckle dusters and the zombie knives and these kinds of weapons that have been used.
I mean, the problem with this, to a certain extent, is every single kitchen in the country, more or less, has a lethal knife somewhere in it. So there's no shortage of knives in this country.
And this is about making our country safer, making our streets safer, and taking action. There's no reason why anyone, whether it's a kitchen or not, needs a zombie knife or knuckle dusters. And also there's action against corrosive substances. We've seen a rise in these types of acid attacks.
All of this is great, but can you tell us, roughly speaking, how many fewer police there are in England and Wales now compared with when you took office in 2010?
Well, there's about 15% fewer police officers, but that's also the point you're trying to make there, and that was made earlier in your earlier interview. It doesn't hold up against the facts. If you go back a decade, serious violent crime was a lot higher than it is today, but so were the police numbers. So for anyone to suggest that this is caused by police numbers, it is not backed up by the facts.
Nonetheless, there are fewer police on the streets, and that must have something, in a common sense way, that must have something to do with it. I'm not an expert
the evidence doesn't suggest that, but that said, we recognise there are pressures on police. Of course there are. There are all sorts of pressures. That's why from 2015 we protected police budgets. There's a settlement for police funding, which
you cut 1,000 police last year.
We provide the funding, and so local police then to make decisions how best to use that funding. But we're increasing police funding by some £450 million in the coming year, and the settlement for the Met Police, for example, which by the way has more police per head than any other police force in the country, almost a quarter of the police in the country. They're getting a £2.5 billion settlement, and they've got over £200 million reserves. So I don't think.
But this idea that it's got nothing to do with police cuts for year after year after year. As I say, I'm not an expert, but Ian Blair, the former Met Commissioner, certainly is an expert. Let me read you what he said on the radio this week. He said, if you take 20% of the Met's money away, something gives, and the thing that's given is neighbourhood policing. And that's true. You go around London, you go around most of the country, you don't see police on the streets. And that must have something to do with the ease with which gangs are able to gather on street corners, in particular in rival areas, and attack each other. Must do.
Well, we have to go by, look at the facts. The facts are that we had much higher numbers of police 10 years ago and much higher numbers of violent crime.
Not much higher numbers.
We did go
increase.
back 10 years and the numbers were far higher. Overall criminal offences, they've come down from something like 19 million a year, recorded offences in 1995, to something like just over 5 million last year. It's the lowest number on record since those records began.
Yes, I agree with that, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the violent offences on the streets. Cressida Dick, the current head of the Met, says we're stretched, we're stretched, we're stretched. She's not kind of crying wolf, is she?
And that's why we're listening to Cressida Dick. She's doing a good job. And that's why you need to listen to the professionals. And that's why the Metropolitan Police are getting an increase in their settlement, access to more funding. But she's also talked about police power. So earlier you talked about stop and search. One of the things we're also announcing today is we're going to consult on extending the powers of stop and search, so that if someone the police believe someone's in possession of acid with no good use in public, then they will be able to stop and search.
But it's still going to be the case the police have to think that a crime will be committed before they're allowed to stop and search.
Of course they need to.
Are you going to change that so that they can stop?
Of course they need to act in the law. And in the past,
are you changing the guidelines in any way for police on stop and search?
We haven't changed the guidelines in any way since 2010. What we've done, the law that covers stop and search hasn't changed. We've had voluntary agreements.
It's too difficult for the police to stop and search. Cressida Dick says that they've been kind of slightly intimidated by political correctness. That when they see people coming down the street towards them, that in the old days they would have stopped and searched, they no longer do, and that allows kids to go out carrying knives, not being as scared as they might have been that they'll be caught.
When Theresa May was Home Secretary, what she wanted to do was rightly make sure that when stop and search powers are used, that they are used within the law. If you take 2013, just one example, 1 year, police inspectors, the Independent Inspection Service found that 27% of stop and searches were done illegally. The police, like everyone else, need to act within the law. And if they believe the powers need to change, then they will rightly talk to government. And as we've shown today, we will listen. And if we need to extend those powers, that's exactly what we will do.
Boris Johnson has called the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, the Kremlin's useful fool this morning. Do you think that's suitable language for the Foreign Secretary to use at a time of national crisis when it comes to our relationships with Russia?
Well, there's no doubt when it comes up against this issue with Russia that we're having, this very serious issue, that Jeremy Corbyn has let the British people down. There's no question about that. But this is a much bigger issue than any one individual. I mean, let's look at the facts here. There's been an attempted assassination on British streets with an illegal chemical weapon that we know is manufactured in Russia. That's what we know. And it is...
The fact that Sergei Skripal is now apparently able to talk, is that a very important moment in this investigation? Will this change things now we're able to talk to the Skripals?
Well, first of all, obviously I welcome the fact that he's better, his daughter is better. I think it will be an important moment if he can give more detail on what he believes has happened. But that's for the police investigation. But one thing we are absolutely clear on, because there's been a lot of talk about this week, and there's been a lot of misinformation and lies from the Russian government again and again. We're absolutely clear. There's no other plausible explanation than Russia being responsible for this attempted assassination on British soil.
Why are we not allowing the niece, Victoria Skripal, to come to this country? And why are we not giving the Russians access to Julia and Sergei Skripal?
The Russians have every right to ask for access to any Russian citizen, but it's up to them. But it's up to that citizen to decide if they want to meet the Russian authorities. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Skripals don't want to meet the Russian authorities.
And the cousin? Why is she not being allowed to come here?
Well, let the cousin make an application and we'll consider it.
All right. Thank you very much indeed, Sajid Javid.